Hello and welcome to Let's Talk, and my guest tonight is Sean Grimes, who is a medical doctor. And in this episode we start to talk a bit more about politics and what's actually happening across the world. If you like this episode, please subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell for notifications of upcoming videos, and follow. And thank you for watching. I've been reading the work of a guy called Alexander Dugin, who is a Russian sociologist, apparently influences Putin quite a bit. And again, he's talking about looking for a fourth political theory, because he's kind of explored the idea that we're stuck in a kind of liberal world that seemed to have won through all the other ones, which would have been communism, socialism. Basically, Nazism came into it as fascism, but each one of those has been dismantled and thrown away almost, kind of thing. And because we're in this kind of globalistic postmodern world, it's almost as though it's kind of got away with itself, and we're in a kind of mayhem, and we're now seeing a kind of more right-wing type sort of idea. How would your views of the way that we're seeing the world change, bearing in mind also that you've not only worked here, but you've also worked in Australia? How has that influenced your way of looking at the world?
The Spanish have been led to believe, the Spanish have a saying that if you're not left-wing when you're young, you've no heart. If you're not right-wing when you're old, you've no brain. And I do find, as I get older, some of the way I see the world is actually becoming more left-wing, not less left-wing. But I do, even though I would see myself as coming broadly from the left, see that the right are not without merit. Their ideas are not without merit. And the difficulty is if the world is moving in a right-wing direction, it may have good reason to consider that is the direction to move. I'm not convinced that moving right-wing is the right way to go, but I would not be telling them that what they think is wrong is not wrong. I would not be so presumptuous as to tell them that. And the people who voted for Trump, the people who've just voted in Sweden, they do perceive a problem. Whether the problem is as they perceive it, I don't know. And their solutions, I'm pretty sure, are not going to be bring the result that they actually want. So to think the situation is facts determine facts, and that's where I think the likes of you and what you work at are so important in this. As a scientist, we could not move a theory forward without having evidence to support it or to reject it, and that's the null hypothesis theory, the principle upon which all of the scientific facts which we currently use in the various theories we have to explain the world are based. The reality of us in our normal day-to-day existences are we don't necessarily work like that. We work on hunch, we work on intuition, we work on extrapolation. And I think that's one of the main problems we have, is that we don't critically analyse what's happening sufficiently. Now, plenty of people fret and worry, but fret and worry I don't think is the same thing. Analysis is really, it has to be unbiased, it has to be, but we're not unbiased, we're human beings. And I think that one of the brilliant aspects of my career to date is that I have had the privilege of getting inside people's existences for a period of time. Usually, unfortunately, when things aren't good with them. But you do get some insight into how they think, how they process what's happening in their lives, how they explain things to themselves, how they understand things. And when we have all the facts at our disposal that we have in medicine and science, and we still have difficulty getting people to understand what's happening, what the reality is of the situation they're facing, with all the information we have, how much more difficult is it within a social setting where we don't have that information with the certainty we have, to get people to understand what's happening and make decisions based on that. I think it's just human nature. We're working, and again, working as a medical doctor and working as a general practitioner, I have more faith in human nature than I have despair for human nature. I think people generally will do the right thing for the people who are important to them. Not necessarily for themselves, but for the people who they deem important to them. And a lot of it is cultural. Australia, you mentioned, Australia is going through, when we had the global financial crisis that hit Ireland and hit the United Kingdom and hit Europe, they were immune from that because they had massive reserves which they used to shore up, falsely as it turned out, to shore up their economy. And now all the countries who raided Australia for their resources have got all the resources they need. They stockpiled them. They no longer need Australia for that. So now Australia is finding it tough. They're actually feeling what the rest of us felt 10 years ago. And the people consequently have gone from, Australia was renowned for being easygoing, fair go, everyone has an opportunity. It's still a country of great opportunity, but they resent, for the first time I think in Australian history, they actually resent others doing well if those others are not perceived to be Australian. So
again, in a way, similar to France and other countries, and even Britain with its Brexit, there's a form of nationalism that's kind of coming into each of these systems, and people. It's interesting because I have been having a number of conversations recently about how do you structure things, and what most people like is we need to look at time-based systems. We need to think about the tasks that we have and the boundaries in which we actually work in a simple way. So if I'm setting a task, we have to have a time limit, and then there are constraints which create the boundaries. And I think because there must be a perception that everything's out of control, people are trying to find out, well, what boundaries can we set in? And they're going back to their past to try and find those boundaries to see. And unfortunately, it's kind of pushing the other out. And that seems to be happening right across the board there. So, and that also would affect, and as a medical doctor, that would affect human beings as a system in themselves, wouldn't it? So, we seem to live in cultures that are forcing us to the limits, to almost treating us like robots, and the fact that AI is coming in to force that system even more, and humans are being seen almost as insignificant in that sense. But how should we, from a medical perspective, be thinking of the way our own health should be, mentally and physically?
I think we need to, as a society, we need to focus on achieving and preserving and maintaining health. This liberal society of which you speak, where we all know smoking's bad for us, but we can smoke. We dare to drive on the roads, and having come back from Australia to Newry, I think there's a huge overlap in driving skills, or lack of them, between the two. The world is a dangerous place, but there are things over which we have control, and I think we should be exercising control over that and trying to preserve health. The chief medical officer for England was on the news yesterday talking about antibiotic resistance. That's a major problem. I think one of the things we're dealing with here is people's understanding. Again, it's knowledge and ability to process knowledge, and we're falling well behind the curve with that. We understand things, but we haven't educated the remainder of the population as to what they need to do. In the same news programme, in the same television programme, you can have the chief medical officer talking about antibiotic resistance, and then you can have the two anchors talking about, if you have a sore throat, see your doctor, because one in every how many hundred sore throats is actually early meningitis. So the system collapses. Can't maintain that. Can't do everything that it's expected to do. People are getting older, living longer, making greater demands on the health service. We all now can expect to grow old, but none of us can expect to be healthy in our old age. That's not necessarily what's going to happen. and that's a major thing. The other thing I feel is that the world is always has been an insecure and dangerous place, and now we're seeing that where possibly for a period of time, which our generation, our era may have experienced, was after World War II, the effort was made very strong to make the world safer, make work secure. We had a period of the 60s, 70s, 80s, and maybe part of the 90s when there were people out there who started a job, were in the same job for 40 years, never had to worry about losing their job, retired with a good pension from the company or from the state, and lived well. Now that's not happening. People don't have job security. The only people who have jobs for 40 years seem to be politicians and MLAs and things like that. None of the rest of us has jobs for 40 years, but that's what our parents may have expected, our grandparents may have expected to some extent. And now we don't have that. And with that insecurity comes judgment, decisions which are not healthy. People choose to deal with stress by drinking alcohol, by watching television, getting lost in soaps, or smoking. People making choices which are not good, and it is pressure and stress which is making them do that. That people don't sleep well, we don't get enough quality sleep, we don't look after ourselves. Jobs have become much less manual, much more mechanised, and I think we're doing ourselves a massive disservice with this. I don't think AI is necessarily going to help the situation. I don't know that it's going to hurt it either. There was a discussion the other day on the radio about whether or not doctors had to fear AI. I don't think we do. And anything which can improve what we do is only good, not bad.
We have more on the way, so please subscribe to this channel and check out the link below if you'd consider becoming a patron to help us keep making more content. Thanks for watching.